The birthplace of humanity, Africa, is a continent blessed with breathtaking landscapes and abundant natural resources. Oil, diamonds, rare metals, gold. The natural resources that the world desires are found in abundance on the African continent. However, why is it that despite such wealth and resources, many people in Africa continue to live in poverty? Why can't these natural resources be leveraged for economic development? The wealth of natural resources and the poverty that plagues its citizens present a startling paradox. To uncover the answer, we must explore the complexities and challenges facing Africa. Hello everyone, my name is Kanta. Have you ever watched the movie Black Panther? The setting is the fictional African nation of Wakanda, a land rich in the powerful mineral vibranium. To protect this valuable resource from falling into the hands of other nations, Wakanda has remained isolated and developed independently. Of course, Black Panther is a work of fiction, but when I watched the movie, a certain thought began to grow in my mind. What if an African country could utilize its natural resources for the benefit of its own citizens? Could it have developed like Wakanda? As mentioned at the beginning, the African continent is rich in natural resources such as oil, diamonds, rare metals, and gold, all of which are highly sought after by the world. On the other hand, even in countries abundant in resources, many citizens continue to live in poverty. For example, Algeria, the largest country in Africa by area, is located in North Africa and faces the Mediterranean Sea. Algeria is known as one of the world's leading producers of oil and natural gas. Particularly, natural gas is exported to Europe through pipelines installed on the Mediterranean seabed, making it one of the major gas exporters to Europe. The film Blood Diamond, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, depicted the abundant diamond production in Sierra Leone, a country in West Africa that experienced a civil war from 1991 to 2002. Another resource that has attracted significant attention in recent years in Africa is rare metals. Rare metals refer to metals that are either produced in small quantities or are difficult to obtain in high quality. Examples include tantalum, used in smartphones and laptops, and cobalt and lithium, which are used in lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. These rare metals are abundantly produced in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country in Central Africa that has been frequently featured on Kanta's YouTube channel. However, just because a country is rich in natural resources like oil, diamonds, rare metals, and gold, it doesn't mean that its citizens are reaping the benefits. On the contrary, many people in resource-rich countries continue to suffer from poverty. Let's take a look at some actual data. To define poverty, we use the International Poverty Line. Falling below this line means that individuals cannot afford even the basic standard of living. According to this measure, 33% of the population in Algeria, 43% in Sierra Leone, and 73% in the Democratic Republic of Congo live below the international poverty line. In other words, it means that many people are unable to maintain even a basic standard of living. The economies of resource-rich countries have been extensively studied, particularly in the 1990s. These studies have shown that countries with abundant natural resources tend to experience stagnant economic performance, persistent poverty, and lower economic growth rates compared to countries with fewer resources. Common sense suggests that utilizing natural resources would spur economic growth and improve the living standards of the population. However, why do countries with abundant natural resources often have populations that remain poor? This trend is particularly pronounced in Africa. While the issue is complex and involves various factors, one key concept to understand this phenomenon is the economic term Dutch disease. Dutch disease refers to the phenomenon where an increase in natural resource exports leads to an appreciation of the national currency, which in turn causes a decline in the domestic manufacturing sector. The appreciation of the national currency means that the value of the country's currency rises compared to other currencies. The term Dutch disease originates from the late 1950s, when natural gas was discovered in the North Sea, leading to an economic decline in the Netherlands despite this resource boom. Why does the development of natural resources lead to economic decline instead? It seems strange, doesn't it? Let me explain the reasons behind this phenomenon. When a country discovers abundant natural resources and begins exporting them actively, it can achieve a significant trade surplus. A trade surplus occurs when the value of exports exceeds the value of imports. This initially boosts the country's economy, but the trade surplus can lead to a stronger national currency. This means that the value of the country's currency becomes higher compared to other countries' currencies. In this situation, exports other than natural resources, such as agricultural products and domestically manufactured goods, become relatively more expensive compared to those produced in other countries. This leads to a loss of international competitiveness. As a result, domestic agriculture and manufacturing decline, causing people who worked in these sectors to become unemployed. This phenomenon is known as Dutch disease. The term originates from the late 1950s, when the development of natural gas in the North Sea led to the decline of manufacturing in the Netherlands. Dutch disease is not the only reason why resource-rich countries often experience slower economic growth and continued poverty among their citizens. This time, I will introduce 3 reasons. The first reason is that industries other than the resource sector find it difficult to grow. Many African countries are rich in natural resources, such as oil. However, this often leads to an economy that is heavily dependent on the resource sector. The resource industry does provide some revenue for the country, but its impact does not spread throughout the entire economy. This is because, as I will explain later, the resource industry is often dominated by a limited number of companies, which are frequently owned by a small elite group. Furthermore, the resource industry often struggles to attract local talent, and in many cases, foreign experts with technical skills are brought in. This does not contribute to the development of local human resources or technological advancements. For example, developing resources like oil and natural gas requires substantial equipment and capital, but the number of workers employed in these operations is relatively small compared to the scale of the investment. Therefore, even if the resource industry is large-scale, such as with massive oil production, it does not create significant domestic employment. Moreover, the equipment and machinery needed to develop these resources are often developed in advanced countries and imported for use. As a result, there is little impact on the domestic manufacturing industry. Due to these factors, the resource industry grows while other industries struggle to develop, leaving most of the population unable to escape poverty. The second reason is that economies reliant on natural resources are subject to the fluctuations of international resource prices. African countries rich in resources are highly dependent on international market prices for those resources, resulting in less stable economic growth. Resource prices fluctuate based on the balance of supply and demand. If many countries want a particular resource, the price increases, but if fewer countries desire it, the price decreases. This means that prices can rise or fall sharply depending on the current market conditions. For example, since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the price of crude oil has fluctuated significantly. When a country relies heavily on high resource prices, it may experience substantial revenue from resource exports temporarily. However, if prices suddenly drop, it can have a severe impact on the domestic economy. Fluctuations in resource prices make it difficult for governments to forecast their income, complicating budget planning and long-term projects. Due to these factors, resource-rich countries often find it challenging to achieve stable economic growth. The third reason is that a small group of powerful individuals monopolize the rights and profits from natural resources. In many African countries, there is a specific elite class that has close ties with the government and domestic or foreign companies regarding resource development and management. This elite class tends to monopolize the information and authority related to resource development and trade, thereby securing the profits for themselves. On the other hand, ordinary citizens, local governments, and rural residents are often excluded from participating in resource-related activities and do not benefit from the economic growth generated by resource development. Furthermore, when a specific elite class monopolizes the rights and profits from resources, it can lead to increased political corruption. For example, according to the Global Political Corruption Rankings by Transparency International, Algeria ranks 104th, Sierra Leone ranks 108th, and the DR Congo ranks 162nd out of 180 countries. These rankings indicate that countries rich in resources tend to have higher levels of political corruption. When fairness and transparency in politics decline, the redistribution of wealth from resources to the citizens often does not occur. It also becomes challenging to attract foreign investors or gain support from international organizations. Due to these factors, in resource-rich countries, a small group of elites monopolizes the rights and profits, leaving the majority of the population in poverty. Having examined these 3 reasons, you might start to wonder about something. Indeed, there are many countries in Africa where, despite abundant resources, the citizens live in poverty. But what about the Arab countries in the Middle East? They have abundant oil and their citizens lead affluent lives. You might be imagining this right now. What are the differences between oil-rich countries in Africa and those in the Middle East? Of course, there are differences in historical backgrounds and political systems, but one decisive factor is population size. For example, the United Arab Emirates, known for being home to Dubai, has a population of about 9 million. However, only around 830,000 are UAE nationals, making up less than 10% of the total population. The remaining 8 million are foreign workers and immigrants. On the other hand, Algeria, another oil-rich country in Africa, has a population of 43 million. Nigeria, also rich in oil, has a population of 210 million, while the DR Congo, rich in rare metals and other resources, has a population of 95 million. No matter how abundant the natural resources are, with such large populations, it becomes difficult to distribute the wealth equally among all citizens. In addition to the Gulf countries in the Middle East, Norway in Northern Europe is also blessed with oil and natural gas. However, its population is around 5.4 million, which is significantly smaller compared to African countries. Additionally, whether a country can leverage its abundant resources for economic development depends significantly on whether its government functions effectively. However, in the case of Africa, there is a history of being exploited by foreign powers for hundreds of years, including the slave trade, colonial rule, and interventions by superpowers like the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War era. While countries in Europe, US, often referred to as developed countries, have taken hundreds of years to gradually develop into modern states, many African countries lack this history of modernization due to being exploited and manipulated by foreign powers. This lack of historical development has made it difficult for systems like wealth redistribution, a fundamental role of the state, and democracy to take root. As a result, even with abundant resources, these countries struggle to utilize them for the benefit of their citizens. As explained so far, the phenomenon where abundant resources lead to slower economic growth is known as the resource curse. What are the solutions to problems like the resource curse? This is a complex issue, so I will explain it concisely. First, it is important to develop industries other than the resource sector. By fostering the growth of non-resource industries, economic growth becomes more stable and less susceptible to fluctuations in resource prices. Relying on a single industry means that if that industry suffers a setback, the entire national economy is impacted. Resource industries in particular are highly influenced by international affairs, making them less stable. It is necessary for African governments to develop new industries through various methods, such as improving the investment environment for foreign investors and supporting small and medium-sized enterprises. Some people might feel that the problem is so immense that it seems unrelated to them. However, despite the complexity of this topic, if you've watched this far, I have a final question for you to consider. Who has benefited from Africa's abundant natural resources? As we have seen, in African countries rich in natural resources, many people still live in poverty. The abundant natural resources, envied by the rest of the world, have not enriched the lives of the local people. So, whose lives have been enriched by natural resources such as oil, diamonds, and more recently, rare metals used in smartphones and electric cars? That is those of us living economically advantaged lives, isn't it? Since the regions in Africa that are rich in natural resources are physically distant, we tend to view poverty there as part of a distant world, seemingly unrelated to the world we live in. However, if we look at the current state of the world through the lens of natural resources, we can see that the various issues occurring in distant areas are actually not unrelated to our own lives. We can understand that the world is interconnected. Kanta's channel explains various issues in the world that are difficult to learn about through other channels. The important thing is not to be interested in world events, but to stay interested. Please subscribe to my channel to keep your interest. Thank you again for watching to the end. See you again in the next video.